everybody, how's it going? So welcome back to Reigate Lake, welcome to Reel Up My Park from scratch, and we've managed to hit episode number 15. So guys, thank you so much for coming along for the journey today. Whether you're a returning viewer that keeps coming back or whether you're only finding me for the first time, absolutely every single one of you is welcome here. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, then please do, because it helps to expose this channel to more and more people, and the more interaction I get with this park, just the more inspiration and the more motivated I get to finish it. So absolutely everything you do really does help. And so here we are, this is Reigate Lake, this is 15 episodes worth of work. So it's been a bit of a slog, and it's a big piece of work. So this is a UK theme park that we're building in Planet Coaster, and we're dealing with absolute massive ultra realism. So we're dealing mid-budget, we're dealing with something along the budget lines of Thorpe Park or Drayton Manor, that kind of level. But we're also taking quite a lot of inspiration from parks like Canada's Wonderland, Hyder Park, Gardaland, that kind of thing, Blackpool Pleasure Beach to an extent. So because this is a medium budget park, we're dealing with very clever investments rather than big investments. So for example, we've got our Eurofighter down the bottom here, we've got our stand-up coaster over the top here, we've got the SLC in the middle, and we've just put our kiddie coaster in as well. So we're going to be working on this area of the park here. And I said in the last episode that I was really excited for this because I'm going rogue. I think I've probably oversold this a little bit, but I'm going rogue. So the park, in its idea of clever investment, not massive investments, would have probably gone down the route of wanting some kind of a launched coaster. And because we're dealing with this kind of area being developed and built in probably the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's more of a supporting area. So you would have something major around the back here, something major down the bottom here, and this would be a bit more of a supporting area. So we're sort of, again, that mid-budget feeling. So they wouldn't go for a Mark coaster because that's too new. They've not been around long enough to warrant being in this area. They probably wouldn't have gone for an Intamin launch coaster because they would have been too expensive at the time. So that only really leaves you with one clever, inverted commas, clever investment, and that would have been a Vekoma Booster Bikes, right? And the idea of that is that every coaster in this park would have had some kind of unique selling point. This is the idea of clever investment. So we've got the sheer drop coaster over here with the Eurofighter, the stand-up, the SLC that's just a cheap, nasty invert, the kids coaster that's a bit twisty and turny. So it kind of makes sense that a Booster Bikes would be in this park, because what better USP have you got than it's a launched coaster and it's themed around bikes? But guys, don't get excited. We're not talking Hagrid's Motorbike Adventure or whatever it's called, Universal kind of level. Absolutely no way. We are probably talking along the lines of Velocity at Flamingo Land, and probably a bit better than that. Probably a bit longer. And so I'm thinking that I want the launch to come across here because it will square off the area quite nicely. But I don't know what side I want it yet. I haven't sort of played out the area that well. I kind of just need to sort of see how everything lays. So in this area, I want the booster bikes to be there, and maybe a couple of supporting attractions, and maybe a grab and go style kiosky type restaurant. We don't need a major restaurant in this area because we've got one down here, we've got one in the western area, and like I say, this is more of a supporting area, and it's going to back onto what will eventually be the rapids. So that's kind of where I need to think about this one, and I want to make a feature of the actual launch itself. Also, before I do anything, I've done some more research with this whole kiddie coaster, and there's a few things actually that I need to retrofit onto the coaster. I've forgotten to put the lights on the lift hill, so I need to fix that straight away. And I realised in the dead of the night, like literally after the video had gone out and I was asleep, I woke up and I thought, oh my god, this whole corner was saved specifically for the mechanism for the transfer track, and I didn't put it in. So that's probably something I should fix. So yeah, that needs to be done. And also, the lift hill part of this kiddie coaster, the most heavy part of this, where the bigger part of the heavy lifting is actually at the bottom. And so I've put all of the gravel in along here just to sort of bulk out the ground and give it a bit of stability. But I've actually forgotten to put the concrete padding at the bottom here that would be the supporting area. So I kind of need to retrofit that into the actual coaster itself. So that's what I'm going to do. Just to go back to the booster bikes, and it's going to come here. So why I'm going rogue with this, and that's because we don't have one in our portfolio. I wanted to build a coaster that I know nothing about, that I've researched from scratch, and this is going to be a big task because I've got no frame of reference. I don't know the first thing. All I've got is frame of reference from Intamin coasters, the launch coasters. Nothing to do with the Vekoma Booster Bike. But I wanted to do that purposely because everything else has been built from reality, things that I'm familiar with, things that I know, and I wanted to be out of my comfort zone for this episode. So, whilst I'm feeling uncomfortable, I'm just going to get on and do it and jump in at the deep end and see what I can do. I've already done some research. I've already got a few ideas of what I want. So I'm just going to go and do it. And I think we should probably now check out how it actually turned out. Here we go. So, after so much research, quite a lot of design, quite a lot of redesign, and then some smoothing, and then reprofiling, and then some more design, we finally have ourselves booster bikes. So yeah, it's come together quite nicely actually. And when I was doing all of the research into the booster bikes, I found that they all share very similar design principles and very similar design patterns. Like for example, they all have the inclining brake run. They all come into the station. They all pretty much have a turnaround of some capacity or some kind of ability to leave the station to do the launch. So not like Intamin's where they launch from the station. They tend to come out of the station. And then they come into a brake run that straightens out the train because you don't want to be launching from a bend, right? And then into the actual launch track. And the launch itself is a hydraulic launch, so it's very similar to how Intamin's launches work for their accelerator coasters. But unlike Intamin coasters, the hydraulic launch building is halfway up the launch, and I can't work out what the mechanics behind that is, how that actually works. And there's nothing out there that I can look at for documentation that suggests why or how that is a thing, but it's a thing. You look at all the booster bikes, you look at all the POVs, you look at all the images and everything, and you'll clearly see that the hydraulic house is halfway up the actual launch itself. The other thing as well, the characteristic that I found is that they don't have a catwalk that goes all the way along the launch. They will actually end the catwalk at the beginning of the launch and then begin it again at the end of the launch. Did that make sense? And then it goes up to the, especially with the first bunny hop, it goes about 3/4 of the way up the bunny hop, and then the bunny hop is lined with trim brakes, so it can control the speed coming out of the launch and into the actual coaster itself, or into the layout. Now, the Planet Coaster version that we're playing with here is actually missing quite a lot of realism. I'm going to need to do absolutely loads to the launch area to bring it up to some kind of ultra realistic standard. I mean, I've got an A4 sheet of things and observations that I've made of the existing booster bikes that I'm going to need to do to just the launch section. This also applies to the rest of the track as well. Like for example, I can't put trim brakes and everything all the way along here because of the actual angle of the hills, and the Planet Coaster doesn't allow you to do that, so I can't do some things that booster bikes do actually do. But I've tried to stay real to the design brief and to the design specifications of booster bikes as much as possible. So there's a bit of sort of creative liberty that's been taken with this, but when I've done that, I've made sure that there is precedent in the design documents to say that the coaster can do this. There's just no real life application for it, so it works a little bit actually like Cheetah Hunt. You know that weird figure of 8 thing that Cheetah Hunt does? If you were to build that in Planet Coaster without knowing that Cheetah Hunt existed, you'd probably think that, you know, some idiots just come along and just created some awful piece of track and it doesn't actually look real. But it's not until you get pointed in the direction of Cheetah Hunt that you actually realise it exists and it's real. And that's kind of true with the hammerhead turn here and the fast S-bend here. So the principle behind a booster bike coaster is that you actually need to focus on twists, turns, speed and hairpins essentially, but you don't want to be taking your corners too fast because of the g-forces. You can't bank the track too much. So the idea is you're supposed to be trying to kill the speed as much as possible before it hits the brake run, and I've achieved that actually quite nicely here, in the sense that the launch is up to 50 mile an hour, which is about right for booster bikes. But by the time it hits this bend here, which looks really, really tight, it's only doing about 15 mile an hour over the top. So it nicely kills off its momentum as it goes around the track. And this hammerhead turn here looks really tight, so it looks like it's really uncomfortable. It's only doing 19 mile an hour around there, and that's perfectly acceptable for a train of this type, or a coaster of this type. So even though it looks like it's quite like tight and unrealistic, it's actually, there's a precedent set for it. The design document says that it can actually do this kind of turnaround, and so I've followed the briefing that they've got there. So yeah, the layout. Then we come out of the launch, we go into a bunny hop, and we go into a really long, drawn out turn that comes down to the ground, and then it comes into a raised S bend. So here we go. Here's the train now. So come into a raised S bend like this, and then we come down into another ground level turn, and then it goes into a bunny hop air hill, and then into this hammerhead turn. And so yeah, that just looks like it's traveling faster than it really is. It's only 19 mile an hour. Then into the S bend. So that's taken at quite some speed, so I've had to be careful with that. And then it comes into this really strange turnaround, and I wanted to have a bit like a lateral bunny hop almost. So this one comes down to the ground, bunny hops up slightly, and then down again. And the idea of this is so that it actually regains some momentum to make it over this top hill. And then, like I say, it reaches this top hill at about 15 mile an hour, which is just fast enough to kill the excessive G-forces of the helix down, and then into the final bunny hop and into the brake run. So that's that's pretty much the layout, and I'm actually quite pleased with how this has turned out. Footprint wise, it's about the same footprint as Velocity. It's got a little bit more of a bump here, so Velocity is more top heavy up here. It sort of comes out to the launch and it's all round and flowery up here, whereas this one sort of extends down slightly, but it's actually about the same size in terms of scale and the park as Velocity would be at Flamingo Land, so I'm pleased with that. I've also decided to go for a maintenance shed in this one. All the booster bikes I've seen don't have maintenance sheds, but I don't want to almost feel like I'm fobbing people off because I didn't do a maintenance shed for the other coaster, and it just feels like I'm trying to cut corners. So I'm going to take some design liberty on this one, and I'm going to go down the route of the similar similar shed that Stealth has got at Thorpe Park. It just feels like this coaster should have one, and I've just started the process of the transfer track here and how that's actually going to connect. So I've made sure that this angle here is actually in the correct place if it were to be placed here. So I just need to put all of the mechanisms in, and like I say, there is so much work I need to do to the launch. It's unreal. I'm just going to need to do quite a lot. The area itself, I wanted this area to be long and thin because I've got plans for this area here, and I've already been asked the question, why are you bulking your coasters together in such close proximity like this? So you've got the SLC, you've got the booster bikes, you've got the kiddie coaster and the stand-up coaster, and they're all like within earshot of each other. There's a design reason for that. So luckily for us, the way that the park is laid out, guests are already going down different pathways, so we're not actually congregating them, and the entrances are split enough away that it's not going to cause congestion, but their coasters are now actually close enough together to be maintained in batch. So, and then you can also have like ride staff as well. Your ride staff would share this area. So like, for example, this area here would actually be one area, and you can just easily transfer your staff. So if your booster bikes goes down and your staff are trained on the SLC, you can send them across to SLC. Or if they're down on the kiddie coaster and this decides that it's going to close, but you've got somebody that still needs to be trained and signed off on the stand-up coaster, you can quickly send them over and you're not actually wasting time. And so that's why I've taken the decision to put these in such close proximity to each other. But it also means as well that your maintenance vehicles don't have to travel so far between the coasters. So it may be that a maintenance vehicle may pick something up from the stand-up coaster and then travel down and pick something up from the booster bikes, and it's then carrying multiple parts of different coasters and down to the maintenance sheds. So it kind of has like a park efficiency aspect to it. So the rest of the area, I just wanted to put a couple of supporting rides in. Of course, you need a Dodgems around some kind of like a racey type ride. I wanted to put a car ride in, but no, I'll put it in elsewhere. It's fine. We will have one, but I just don't know where. There just wasn't enough room to put it in here. Toyed with the idea of go-karts, but I don't no, just no. And then I wanted a thrill ride. We don't have a thrill ride at the moment at this area of the park, so we've got all of our family stuff down here. Our closest thrill ride is the drop tower, and even then it's not really like a thrill ride as you would recognize it. So I wanted something down here just to draw the thrillsters down, and so that's what we've got, the Insanity in game. It looks awesome, so I quite like this layout. Then we're just going to have a grab and go and a game store. Like, we haven't got an arcade either. We haven't built an arcade yet, so that's what we've got here. We've just got the starts of an actual arcade. And then I've also done the retrofit on the kiddie coaster. And this got a bit out of control, actually, because I realised I'd missed loads. Like, complete oversight in some of the stuff that I'd put on. So, for example, I hadn't put, as you already know, the lights on the lift hill, but then I realised that these are going to need some kind of control boxes. And then, as I then carried on, I realised that kiddie coasters, because of the way that they're put together as the auto save kicks in, kiddie coasters actually have warning signs up the lift hill. So please remain seated warning signs that go all the way up the lift hill. And so I'd forgotten to put those in. And then I realised they all have CCTV. So in some parts around the actual ride itself, wherever there's a catwalk or wherever there's an opportunity for somebody to stand up or to walk or whatever, there's actually CCTV in place. So I've put all of that CCTV in. I put the concrete padding down the bottom, and I did loads, again, research on this one. I couldn't find any more detailing that was needed here. It's not like a B&M where you would have some kind of electric cabling and the panel work and whatever down here. It's just a concrete pad that just supports the weight of the bottom of the lift hill, and then you just fence it off, because everything else is actually quite nicely contained with the tyre drives underneath the lift hill. So that's what we're going for. That's what we're going for there. And then when we come over to the brake run, again, I have put some CCTV in because that was all missing. So that's now been put into place. I've put the transfer track in. So this transfer track caused me a nightmare. There is just enough room for this to work. In hindsight, if I were to go back and redesign it, I would give this a little bit more of a wider berth just to give it a bit more space. But this is just about functional. It just about works, and it's the same principle as the booster bikes, actually, that when this is moved into place, it actually connects to the track. And I've made sure that that's the case. So essentially what I did was I joined the track up, brought the straightened out the track out here, turned it round, and then repeated the thing off on the opposite. And then that made sure then that was completely compliant to the curvature of the actual track, and then just deleted the rest that I didn't need, and then rejoined the tyre drive. So this is correct as far as it can go anyway. I mean, there's a slight gap, but yeah, that's down to limitations of what we can do with the coaster builder. Like, you're limited to actual sizing rather than, I couldn't move this if I wanted to without building a separate coaster, and I don't want to be notified of incomplete coasters in this park. No, just no. And then in the station, so more CCTV. And in the station, I realised, well, if I'm putting CCTV all along the catwalks, I actually need it in the station as well. So I started to put the cabling and the actual CCTV in, and then I had that dawning realisation of, well, who's actually watching this CCTV? Like, it's fine putting these cameras in, but who actually watches them? And then I thought, well, that's the ride-up. So you'd have it in the ride-up booth, and then it dawned on me, there's no ride-up booth. So there is now. Hello, she's talking. Is it she? Is it he? No, it's he. Yeah, so I've just built the real quick ride-up booth, and again, this coaster is supposed to be something cheap and nasty. It's only a kiddie coaster, so I've just carried on the same idea with the theming and the colours and everything. And we've used this in the actual photo booth as well. So in the actual photo stand over here, the idea of the square rectangle panels and stuff. And then inside, I have just done the typical officey type stuff. You've got a computer, you've got some paperwork, you've got some clutter and everything. And then above the actual console itself, that's where your CCTV would then be viewed. And I just put a clock in so you can see. So I ended up quite liking that because it now feels more complete than it did. But that said, doing all of this actually started to create a list for phase 2 preparation. So before I release to the workshop, I've realised that there's actually quite a bit I might need to go back and revisit with some of the coasters. So I was having a chat with Tobias, I think it is, over on one of the other videos about the support structure for the B&M, and that singular support structure actually wouldn't work, so I need to sort of fix that for the lift hill. And then I realised there's no CCTV on here either, so I need to fix that. The supporting of the loop needs looking at because there needs some kind of support along the side. I completely missed that. And then I've missed some other stuff on the top of the lift hill for the SLC that needs to go in. So, yeah, I mean, I need to do some work. But that's the area as it stands at the moment anyway. So, pleased with how this is turning out. I've chatted for far too long, so I'm actually going to shut up and get on with it. So let's see what happens, shall we? Oh man, booster bikes in real life are just so complicated. They're like, there's so much that you need to put into building one of these things. It's absolutely incredible. And I think I'm starting to actually get there. I think I'm starting to sort of break the back of making this coaster actually real. So for example, you've got this area around here. There's loads of like proximity sensors and everything that just determine where the actual train is, and to know that the launch has been successful and everything. So this is what I've sort of put along all of this side here, and then making sure that everything has a purpose, everything is all cabled up, and then you've got the CCTV cameras all along here. This is, as you can hear, solid trigger sequence. So I kind of figured that with the booster bikes being built sort of around the end of the 2000s, 2009, 2010, I kind of figured that the park might have actually spent a bit of money on this one. So whereas the other rides they were just plonking in because they were just plonking them in, I kind of figured that this would be one of their star attractions, so I've made a bit more of an effort with it. So it's got a launch sequence, it's got lights that light up at night and everything. So yeah, that's all done. But anyway, back to the aspect of realism. So the game already puts these vertical supports in, so these really thin vertical supports. But when I've been doing all of the research, you also have 2 additional support types that come with the launch section. So you have these, like, I call them the pi supports because it looks like the pi symbol, right? But I don't actually know what the official name is. But they're like bracing for the brake run that we've got here. And they don't need to be too bad, but they need to be quite hefty because you've got all of the launch forces off the back of here. So anything that's sort of like thrown into the metalwork this way would all vibrate and reverberate around here. So you need a bit more sturdier supporting to go on here just to dampen some of that force. And then they've also got these diagonal braces as well. And the idea is that it actually takes all of the vertical forces and like the vibration forces, and it dampens them down this way rather than sending it down vertically. It's quite a clever system actually, the way that it sort of dampens it. And then all along this way you have a concrete pad, and then you also have 2 concrete like gullies almost, and then you have the metalwork that sits on top. So there's actually quite a lot of physics and engineering that goes into an actual launch section for a booster bike, and I didn't really think that through. Like Intamin obviously have very similar, but this is like over-engineered, but it's beautifully engineered at the same time. We've also got the flywheel at the bottom. There's one this side and there's one at the end. I still don't know how this hydraulic building works, so as a result the inside, unfortunately, I'm sorry, it's just, well, it's parts. Look. I can't even detail the inside because I can't find any reference images on what the detailing on the inside should look like, so I think this is just going to be a squint and believe that it's there kind of thing. Yeah, and then I've also put the what are these called? Stairs. They're called stairs. I put the stairs in for the end of the catwalks, and then I just continued the CCTV and everything that you need along the run here as well. So yeah, this whole idea of the weird catwalk, I'm still not entirely sure what it is. I think in real life, because you have these trim brakes, the trim brakes have the ability to stall the train in that position, and it can hold it in that position. I don't quite know why you wouldn't just bring it back down to the launch section, but again, in the absence of having any kind of reference materials that tell me, I kind of just got to go with the flow, right? So it sort of is what it is. And so yeah, the other thing that I've done is I've just added all of the lights and everything along the brake run, just to make sure that that's all there. And again, the proximity sensors are all along the side, along with all of your power cables and your CCTV as well. So this is now starting to come together in terms of operationally. It's now looking much more real than it did before. It's a few little extra things that I need to do. So I need to put some kind of a path cover over the top here, just to put underneath the launch mechanism, just in case you have any falling parts or falling articles and stuff. But that's going to come when I decorate the rest of the area. And obviously it needs a bit of theming as well, so we're going to go for that whole motorbike race theming, really, aren't we? So we're going to need some kind of racing theme. I'm not going to do anything too heavy. It's just going to be really light touch, just to accent the theming in the same way that we did over in the western area. It's not a heavily themed western area, it's just believable. So I'll throw around some stuff, but that's going to come like much later on. So the other thing that I did then is over here in the maintenance shed. So again, I've very much copied the idea of stealth at Thorpe Park and Rita at Alton Towers and other Intamin style sheds, really, because that's the only reference images that I've got. So that's kind of what I'm going with. So I've got the transfer track. It's just about wide enough now to operate. So this piece of track here comes across and it's in the right position, like I said before. And then this bit now has enough room on the actual transfer track itself. And I've also put in the idea of the electric cables and everything. So that's all there. And then over in the maintenance shed, it's actually kitted out as all of the others would be. So these are functional maintenance areas, right? So they're not going to need to be sort of like kitted out with office spaces. It's not going to look lovely. There's not going to be flowers and plants and decoration and stuff everywhere. You might have, like, here we've got a couple of posters. We'd need a couple of safety posters for that sort of stuff. But again, this is like a work area. So the trains would come in here. They'd have all of their maintenance done. You'd probably get some kind of a cherry picker or whatever in. They do all of the work underneath, dismantle the trains, do what they need to do, etc. So I've just kitted it out with all of the clutter and stuff that you'd find in a maintenance shed, just like I have done with all of the other rides, actually, just with all of the other maintenance sheds that I've done. And this is probably a bit overkill for this type of coaster, but it's fine. I put some underlighting so that you can see underneath the trains, and then at the top I've also put ceiling lighting, and also the idea of having some kind of aircon unit or air vent unit, etc. Figured that the two windows that are accessible from this floor would probably have blinds. You'd probably want the sun to stop coming in, but you wouldn't necessarily have blinds on your other windows, purely because you can't get to them, so you wouldn't be able to actually shut the blinds even if you wanted to. And then around the side here, I've just got the actual garageway, the garage door, so that you can get vehicles and vans and everything, and lorries and everything into the actual maintenance area. And then the other side here, I wanted the idea of a raised door. So unlike the stand-up coaster where the door is at the bottom, you go up the stairs on the inside, this is the other way around, you go up the stairs on the outside. And this is primarily because of this area here. So this is supposed to be a platform that raises and lowers, and I still need to make it do that, make it believable. And the idea of that is that you can raise and lower it to service the vehicles as they're coming in and out. And maybe this could also be some kind of transfer track, but I don't think it's actually long enough to accommodate a transfer track. But you'd want some kind of raising and lowering of a platform. So I just actually need to make that do it. I need to put some runners in, and I need to put some electrics and stuff in. But this is like the placeholder that I've put in at the moment, just to make it sort of, it's there. And that's why you've got the barriers around the outside. So it's looking good. I'm quite pleased actually with how this is coming together. I didn't think it was going to look this authentic. I thought it was going to look a bit rubbish and a bit pants, but actually I'm quite pleased with it. So I'm going to carry on with this. The next bit I need to do is the station. And so I know exactly how I want the station. It's going to be an end of 2000s modern style station, so I know exactly what I want it to be. I've been planning this one for quite some time, so that's exactly what I'm going to do, and I will see you in the next update. Well, the process of making this area come together and actually make sense is really starting to come into its own. So as promised from the last update, I have actually been working on the station area over here, and then I kind of got a little bit carried away with what I was doing. So I sort of wanted to get a feel for how the station was sitting into the grand area and how it was going to come together with this really light touch racing theme, especially as we're dealing with medium budget racing theme. So it's just the idea of throwing some roady type stuff around and hoping for the best. And so what I needed to do was to start the decoration of the outside area. So I started to lay down the path because I'd chosen that I wanted to use the brick from the western area. But then when I was doing that, I then realised I needed to use the mulch technique to hide some of the pathing misdemeanors. And then I needed to decide where the joining was going to be between the previous areas and the new area. And it just sort of got a little bit carried away. So you can see there's quite a lot that's changed since the last update. So let's go through everything that's happened so far. So starting over in the station, we know that the coaster would have been built around 2010, so the architecture needs to reflect that sort of time. And I always wanted to do this split level station idea, where I had one side flat roof, one side pitched roof. But I wanted it to be self-supporting, so I've only got the 3 columns, and each of the columns then has 4 braces that come off of it. Those 4 braces then, or 3 of those 4 braces then meet each other the whole way along the actual roof itself, and so that's what creates the support for it. So this is actually going to be quite sturdy. The station itself still needs quite a lot of its detailing done, so there's loads of stuff I need to do to the track, there's loads of stuff I need to do underneath, and all of the electrics and whatever, so that's all yet to come. I just wanted to make sure that the station building was exactly as I wanted it. And then we come across this way, and I've had to reconfigure the queue slightly. So reading some legislation about ramps and everything. In an ideal world, these ramps would be shallower and longer. So like this ramp would probably start there, and it would be not so steep, and it would come down to about here, and then it would come across, and it would come back. So I've just gone for this snaking zigzag on this part, just to make it sort of a bit more realistic. Again, it's a squint and believe that it's real, because this would actually be further out, but it's fine. It's done. And then I just had to reconfigure the actual cattle pen queues just some more. I've put down the fencing that I wanted in the area, and I've also put down the concrete padding as well. I've missed a bit over this side that I've just noticed, actually, so I need to just go ahead and correct that, but that's fine. And then I started the idea of the theming, and remembering that this is a medium budget where it has to be believable, not immersive, I kind of figured that the park would probably just throw some road stuff at the queue line, just to go, hey, here's some race type things. And that's kind of what I've managed to achieve here by putting the tyres down the cones and the signs that are on jaunty angles and stuff. And I think with the foliage, when that goes in, that's actually going to come to life quite nicely. I think it's going to sort of just be nicely padded out, filled out enough for it to be believable, but not to be immersive. Remember budget and everything. And then I just added the flags along the actual launchway itself, because that just felt like that's what would be there. It just feels like they would just throw up checkered flags, because that's what you find in raceways, right? And then the other thing I started to do was this idea of the insanity ride, which I've decided to call Pandemonium. And so you can see that it's using the brick pathways, but because I'm using the brick pathways, I've had to again hide those pathway misdemeanors by using the mulch. So if you were to look underneath here, you'd see all sorts of horrid jagged edges, and it's overshot out here and all sorts. So I've managed to tidy it up, and it now looks all right. It looks quite Rollercoaster Tycoon 3, actually, you know, when you put the path covers down on very square-edged pathways. So I've just put some jaunty, jutty-outy bits of queue line over here, and that kind of makes this triangular bit make sense a bit more as well. So that's what I'm doing here. And again, the ride itself wouldn't be a headline ride. It's a thrill ride, and the park doesn't have many of them, but it's not a massive ride. It's not like a star attraction, so they really wouldn't make much of an effort. And I'm thinking more along the Enterprise at Cedar Point and how that's put together. It's there, like it's right in the pathway of a busy thoroughfare, but there's not really a lot of thought and care put into it. So that's kind of the feel that I'm going for here. It's just a ride with a queue, come and play, put some signs up and whatever, and you'd be away. But then I started to come over here as well and put the dodgems in, and I decided I wanted the concrete pad on here because I didn't want to use the mulch around the back by the railway, and it felt like this dodgems would probably have been an afterthought. So the way that this is going to be laid out, it felt like the path would probably have come around this way as well, and it would have been a little bit wider, and that's why it would sort of like straight away lead you into this what's going to be the arcade. And it felt like they would have actually put the dodgems there because they had the space to put it. And so as a result, I wanted it to feel a little bit newer than the area, and that's why it's on its own concrete pad rather than the bricks. Secret between you and I is that I didn't want to colour in this area around here in mulch and whatever. I just wanted to stop the idea of the bricks. But I've kept the brickwork intentionally like this as well, so you can actually see. I mean, I know you saw it in the last episode how I do it, but this is how I've been doing the bricks. Just make sure that all of the lines are lining up and making sure that it's all clean, and then you just come in and backfill the rest, and it will then just pop to life, and it will come to life. And then the last really thing to show you in this part of the update, other than the rest of the theming and everything that I've been throwing around that still needs all of its plant life and whatever, is the introduction of the Photoshop. So I wanted to make sure that this had a photo booth, and I didn't really know where to put it, but actually as I was designing, this sort of came to life and it came about. So here's a really heavily themed shop for photos, but I didn't want the back side of this shop to be so visible to people, right? So it's dead space, like it would be ugly without it. So all I put on the back is a load of vending machines and some actual stuff that people can play with. So I thought that kind of would be how you would monetize this building, especially the back of the building, and sort of hide the fact that it's this really ugly back of a building. Just put some stuff in, like sort of bring the main wall back a little bit and put some stuff in there that doesn't really take up much room, but you can make some money from. So yeah, that's what I did with this area. So this is now the actual photo area, and I quite like how this has turned out. It just looks so horrible, doesn't it? But it looks good with it. So I'm all right with that. I am all right with that. So quite pleased with how the area is turning out. Actually, it's going to really come to life when we get some vegetation in, because that's what happens, isn't it? Like we found that like through here and everything, where you've just got some vegetation that's gone in. So I need to do the arcade. That's my next bit. I need to start thinking about all of the terrain painting and everything, and the terrain heights. Oh, that's the other thing I've done actually, by the way. I started to double up the supports, so where you'd have high lateral forces, I've now started to put V supports in, so that they're actually starting to think about lateral forces. And then that accompanies what we were talking about, the bracing here as well, the diagonal bracing that we've got all along the launch. So anyway, that's enough for this update. I am going to carry on because there's probably going to be one more before the final update, and the one more will be showing you what happens with the arcade before then it comes to life with all the vegetation. So I'm just going to shut up and I am going to get on with it, and I'll see you for the next one. Alright, so I'm going to do a real quick update because there's not really a lot to talk about, but you can see that there's a little bit of change that's happening, and I'm about to start that final detailing phase, you know, where everything starts to come to life. So since the last update, I've been working on the arcade area over here, along with the grab and go food and stuff, and I've also done some detailing on the station as well that I wanted to talk you through to go with that. So over in the station, I've just started to put everything that I need together. So I've just put some numbers on the floor, I put some exit signs and stuff on the floor. I've also put the ride staff around. So this one would have slightly more ride staff than others because the restraints and everything are quite fiddly. It takes quite a while to actually load and check restraints on this, so you'd have quite a lot more staff around. Put the bins and everything. I've also done the ride-up booth as well, so that's now where it is. And I wanted to keep it really simple. So when you look at all of the other booster bikes ride-ups, they are just boxes. They don't really fit into a theme, not like some of the other coasters that we've done. It's just there because it's the sake of that. In fact, if anything, you could probably get away with not having it at all. But the only reason that I've got it is because you need a panel for the CCTV. So it's the only reason why I built it, because it then makes all of that make sense. And so the station also has all of the cabling and everything that's underneath it, and the booster bikes as well. They have this netting. Hello. They have this netting all along the side, and the idea is to stop people and things falling through to the bottom of the station. So I've made this not clip the train, so it's just about right. But in real life, the trains would be slightly narrower, and the actual net would come out slightly further. So this is more representative of what would be here, rather than it being sort of any kind of functional stuff. I've also just put down here just some detailing around the door. So underneath here you'd find other electronics and stuff that the ride would need underneath the station, storage and whatever. It's not kitted out. It's nothing. It's just like your normal underneath the station. That's fine. And then coming over to the actual arcade itself. So I wanted the arcade to be really simple. I wanted it to be a square box building. I didn't really want it to be too fancy. Remembering as well, this would have just been thrown up and possibly wouldn't even be open when the park was quiet. So that's kind of where I was going with this, just something really nice and simple. Your grab and go options on the front then, just your typical food and drink and stuff. And I've just kitted it out with some TMTK items as well, just to make sure that we're detailing it out. So you've got your napkin dispensers and your stuff that comes with that. And then inside the arcade, I've got some gift shops. They're just there to make the arcade inside actually work. And then you've got all of the games. So I've used pretty much the stuff that was over in the hotel in the games unit. And I wanted this idea of having the neons and everything around, so I wanted this to have a bit more of a dated feel to it. Again, remember 2010, so this would now be aging quite badly. But I've just used all of the awesome stuff, the pinball machines and what's this called? Not foosball, is it? The ice hockey table. Is it ice hockey? Air hockey table. Yeah, so these look. Oh, why are they've sunk to the ground? Probably need to fix those, right? Because that's not right. So yeah, and the idea of the arcade, originally the path would have probably come round this way, and then your path would be you'd be facing the actual arcade entrance itself, so you'd be more inclined to go in. But like I said in the last update, we're putting the dodgems in this area, so that's kind of where that's now sitting. It still has that element of walking in, so it's still got that monetization piece. You're walking past it, you're inclined to either walk through it or see what's in there. So yeah. And then on the outside of here, I'm going to put all of the picnic benches and everything for the grab and go stuff. So that's going to be awesome. So yeah, that's pretty much this update. I'm going to actually start the final detailing phase now, and then we can do the final tour of the area. So let's see how it turns out, shall we? Alright, so I'm getting the done for now stamp out, and it's time to officially announce that Hot Hawg Racer is officially open. And actually I'm really pleased with how this has come about. You get some awesome views of the coaster from the plaza. And I didn't actually realise that was the case until I got down to peak level and started to have a look. So from here, this is the entrance area, and you walk underneath the launch track, and that's where you enter all of the cattle pens and everything. And I haven't decorated the back end of this area yet, because much like we did with episode 3 with Eurofighter and dealing with the car park behind it, I didn't really know how that was going to develop to know what the sightline was going to be. So this is kind of the similar situation here. I'm leaving this back area free for me to do what I want. I know I want it to be uphill because I've got some plans and stuff for coasters that are going to go in the back. So I'm going to leave that all until it's actually physically time to do it. But look at the views you get from this plaza area. So awesome view of the launch. It's visible from everywhere in the plaza, and that was the whole intention of this plaza area being parallel to the launch. And then you look back to Pandemonium, which is now all fully fleshed out with its foliage and everything that I wanted to have. So when this is operating, it looks really, really good. It's like a proper sightline, dominating the sightline as you walk right down centre. And then if we carry on around to the left, you get the view of the arcade and the shops and everything that we've put in. So again, it's supposed to be just a really flat building. It's not supposed to have any height to it. It's not supposed to have any dominance to the area. It's just there. And like I say, it's probably closed on quiet days. It's one of those sort of shops. And then you look through this way, and then you've got the Junior coaster in the background and the SLC, just as a mangled, tangle mess of track. And then you look back towards the Dodgems, and then towards the stand-up coaster, and then you just get some awesome views of the mid part of this actual Hot Hawg. It's not funny at all. And yeah, so you get some awesome views of the actual train going around the track. So let's have a look at the actual area then, shall we? Let's go on a tour. So from the previous episode, then this is the area that we were working with. we come through past the junior coaster and past Scissor, and then we carry on around to the right hand side. So you've got the queue line for Pandemonium. Quite pleased with how this has turned out in the end. I thought it was going to end up being a bit bland, but once I put some of the detailing in, it's come out quite nicely. I quite like this two-tone of the concrete versus the brick as well. It creates a bit of a difference in sight, and it's a bit of intrigue. And now with the flowers and everything, it creates a bit of depth and a bit of shade, but also at the same time still very stark and very open. But it's got its signage in now, so that's all in place. And the queue can probably hold about 90 minutes worth of people. So if the game were to be running with full capacity, this would be a full queue, because the prestige of this is nearly 1200. So it's a good ride. It's a good ride to have. Bit of a people muncher too, though. It can munch through quite a lot of people in terms of throughput. And then we come into this way, so these are these really bland low buildings that I wanted. Nothing too spectacular, but they really do the job in the area that exactly as I wanted them to be, because the whole area needs to be dominated by the launch of the coaster. And so I wanted the focal point of the plaza area to be the launch. And I've now fully kitted out the launch area, so I've put all of the electric cabling in, and I've put some more stuff around just to make sure that it's as real as I can possibly get it in Planet Coaster. I mean, there are still some things missing, but you just can't achieve them with Planet Coaster. It's just not possible. So there were a couple of guys as well, actually, that were telling me about the hydraulic buildings for launch coasters, and apparently they don't need to be at the end, as I thought. They can be anywhere. Apparently they will work wherever you place the building. So guys, thank you for that information. That's really helpful, and it kind of explains why this building can be halfway down and it's perfectly acceptable to be there, because the hydraulics will launch no matter where it is, as long as you've got your two cable winches either side. So flywheels, sorry, either side. So the hydraulics will just do its job wherever they're placed. Handy information to know. So then we've got the main plaza area where you've got some picnic benches and everything that you can just come and have a chill out. And then you can come up to the dodgems, and the dodgems themselves are just there as a bit of a crowd muncher, a bit of a crowd pleaser. It's just an additional attraction for somebody to come along. And then in the actual arcade itself, a few changes. I've put some CCTV in, corrected a few things. The pinball machines are now not sunk into the ground like they were. So yeah, this is looking all right as well. Actually, it's looking like it's an arcade. It's a shame that I can't use music. So I don't know if you've noticed, but none of the areas have got any kind of ride music or anything going on, and that's because every time I upload it to YouTube, it copyright strikes it. So I'm just not going to play that game. I'm just going to do it without music. I mean, I get away with my intro music because I wrote that track, so I own the copyright for that track, and I can't dispute my own copyright claim. So even the in-game music for me gets copyright claimed. So I'm just even that music. So I'm just not going to bother. Anyway, in the main plaza area, then this is now all come together quite nicely. The pit stop is all fleshed out, fully fleshed out, and then you've got your ride photos. So you come and buy your ride photos from the photo shop would be a good place to start. And this looks really twee, doesn't it? It looks like authentically the part. It just looks so rubbish, but so good, like so typically race themed. It's really good. And then the station now fully fleshed out, so you've seen most of this already, but it's now fully functioning. People are supposed to be, there we go, they are queuing. So people are actually using the station. It's actually working as a proper ride. It's open and everything. So yeah, it's really good. So you come around, run around the corner into the launch, and then off you go. Round the back in the queue then, I've just put all of the vegetation and everything around just to dapple it out. But like I say, I've done nothing in this area because I know I'm going to be developing this. Likewise, the stuff around this area, I'm going to be developing this in future episodes. So all of this is just left. It's just left as it is. And so that, ladies and gentlemen, is pretty much everything booster bike related. I really do hope that you've enjoyed this episode, and I can't thank you enough for sort of sticking around, especially as we went renegade with this one. This is one that I have no prior knowledge of building, so I actually think it's turned out quite well for just observational and some research-based stuff from the information that I can find. So guys, thank you so much for watching. If you do want to know when the next episode is coming out, you know what to do. Subscribe and all that jazz. Leave a like on the video because it helps me to be exposed to new people. I'm going to expose myself to new people. And no, I'm not going to do that. That's silly. So until we speak again, guys, look after yourselves. Bye-bye.
Terre, Dua, Onda,